Hi, welcome back to the 7th section of the ProtoPie course. Today we're going to learn about pull to dismiss. Oftentimes in the detail screen, you're able to pull the content and then see sort of like the previous screen from where it comes from. But also when you reach a certain momentum, then it goes back and animates back to the previous screen. So let's start with begin pull dismiss.py. This is where we left off from the previous section. And we're gonna go to the second scene, which is called full view. And here I'm going to set for the card to add a trigger called pull. And when you do that, you have to set the direction and also the distance. I'm gonna set the distance to 300. And if you set the direction to right, it's just gonna allow you to drag from left to right. I can also select the other directions, such as to the left, to the top, and to the bottom. Now the distance is the maximum distance that you can drag this to. So this is 300, so that's why it stops right here. And the other thing is, with a pull, if you don't go over to a certain distance, it's gonna come back to where it was. But if you exceed that distance, then it's just gonna stay there, and also it's going to start animating whatever you have set up right here. The other thing is, we're going to set an animation while dragging, and in order to do that, we're gonna need a touchdown trigger. And here we're gonna set the scale for the card to a factor scale to 90%. So now when I drag, it sets to 90% in terms of scale. If you want to be able to center this as you scale, what you need to do is to go to the card element and set the origin to top center. This is going to affect the move properties that you set manually here, but we're going to fix that later. For now, when you start dragging, at least you're going to see that we have the animation that we want here. So now we need to put back the scale to 100% when we're done with the drag. So on release, I'm going to add a trigger called touch up, and here select card and then set the scale to factor 100%. So when I release, it's gonna come back to 100%, and I also need to move to 0 in terms of Y position. Unfortunately, I cannot use reset here because touch up and tap can become conflicted, and that would break the flow of my transition back to the previous screen. Another thing I want to do is to set the radius of this blue cover. So I'm gonna set radius, and I'm gonna set this to 16. And once it's touched up, I'm gonna set back the radius to 0. So now I have something like this. I also want to add a dim background. So what I'm going to do is close card first of all, and then go to shape, create a rectangle. I'm going to name this mask. I'm going to set the background to black. Also, we need to make sure that the size of it is going to take the full screen. So 100%. 100%. Now that I have the mask, in touchdown, I'm going to add a new animation called opacity and set this one to 50%. And for touch up, I'm going to set the opacity to 0%. So now we have a nice dim background, and when we go back, it just goes back to 0% opacity. So going back to the pull, right now we have all our animations set up. But what we want to do is that if we reach a certain point in our pull, we want to move to the previous screen. So we essentially need exactly the same animations as these. So I'm going to copy and paste everything that's inside the tab and put it in pull. So now when I go and I don't do enough distance, it's just gonna go back. And if I do enough distance, then it's going to transition back to the previous screen. But as I've mentioned before, we have the problem with the move, because when you change the origin of your element, then the hard-coded position that you move to has to get changed as well. To fix this, we're gonna need to look at the current position. So when we set to top left, it's 0, and when we set to top middle, it's this number, so 187.5. I'm going to take this number and go to move and set the X position to 187.5, and the same for pull to 187.5. So now when I click, the position seems fine, but we have another problem. The problem is that touch up has move and scale, which can be conflicted with tap and the animations in pull as well. So you can actually prioritize which animation you want, and the ones that are at the bottom will be in priority. So I'm gonna move touch up and touch down to the very top, and so my tap and my pull is going to have priority in terms of animation. So now when I click here, it just animates beautifully, and when I pull, it's not gonna do anything if I don't have enough distance, but if I do, then it's just gonna do my transition. So that's the pull to dismiss technique that I wanted to share with you today. I hope you enjoyed. In the next session, we're going to learn how to create a login experience with multiple screens that are scrollable using pages. It's going to detect the scroll position, and it's going to apply to a page indicator. So I hope to see you in the next session.